bit up, that would be very, very good. We're going to get started now. And just to tell you how we're going to go, we're going to have our Pastor Aubrey. He will say the opening prayer. We'll have Elder Parkinson, Audra Barrow. We'll have Sister Paulette Cameron do the introduction for Kirk Welcome, and he'll also do the introduction for Gabriella. I'm going to give a little testimony right before the program. And then we're going to have Kirk Welcome. He will do the first part of the presentation. And he will ask, if you want to ask questions in between, he's free. He has said he wants to take questions if you don't understand something that he's saying. And then we'll turn it over to Attorney Audra Barrow, and she'll break. And if you have questions, what we'll do is we'll have two people on both sides. If you have questions, just speak into the mic. We will repeat the questions so those that are listening online can actually hear the questions. So I encourage you have take notes, be intentional, listen very keenly, because there's a lot of information that is very, very worthwhile. So thank you all for coming. For those who don't know me, my name is Carol Bennett. I am the head of the Golden Ages Committee, even though I'm only 25. I don't know how they made me that. So I'm going to introduce our pastor, Pastor Aubrey, who will give a few remarks and do the opening prayer. Pastor?
Thank you, Sister Bennett. I'm perhaps going to do it in reverse, and I'm going to do the opening prayer first, and so I'm going to just ask you to stand just for a few moments as we look to the Lord to open our time together. Our gracious God, we're grateful today for your presence, for your mercy, for your grace, and for your leading. We ask, God, that your presence might also even be felt specifically in this time of sharing. We pray, oh God, that even as our hearts and our minds are open to what we shall receive, that ultimately our decisions and our resolve will be blessed with the favor of heaven. We pray, O God, for a smooth flow of today's proceedings, and that all who have come to be enlightened will not leave disappointed. Hear us because we've been careful to ask in the Savior's name. Amen. You may be seated. I want to say firstly a pleasant good afternoon to one and all. We are glad to see you all have assembled. I trust that you have enjoyed the spiritual food today, the physical food, and now you are ready to receive, if we can call it as such, the practical that will be edifying to your soul and lives. I want to just really thank the work of our Golden Ages committee led by Sister Carol Bennett for making this afternoon's program possible. This is something that has been a welcomed forum here at LInden, it being really the sequel or the second edition to a program held last year. And we had such a good response that it was the brainchild of the Golden Ages Committee to continue in hosting the forum and having this sequel actually held today. And so we give commendations to Sister Bennett and her team, and certainly our guests for making themselves available for this afternoon's session. When it comes to planning for the future, many are intimidated because of what they perceive the future implies, or planning for the future implies. But the truth is, the future waits on no one. The future comes, and if it comes without proper planning, then there are consequences to the lack of planning. And that's what makes this session so meaningful, regardless of where you are in the stage of life or wherever your journey is. There are tidbits, there are insights that are meaningful to you in terms of planning. one of the biblical takeaways that I often use in my role as Plan Giving and Trust Services Director at Northeastern Conference is grounded in Genesis, really by the story and experience of Joseph. Many of you are familiar with the story of Joseph, a young man rather, who ended up becoming Prince of Egypt. And what was his responsibility? His responsibility was to plan for what was inevitably to come, to plan for the future. And during the time of plenty, it was Joseph's genius that helped the Egyptian realm to actually store grain for what would be a leaner time. And I think that is a very profound and very practical biblical insight and foundation to forums such as these. The future is inevitable, it will come, and it will reveal to what degree you have actually planned. And so my prayer is today that you will take away all that is planned to be shared as an aspect of your simply being diligent in planning for the future. May God bless you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this wonderful forum.
Thank you, Pastor. Before I turn it over to Sister Paulette and Elder Parks, I just want to give you a little testimony. It's not really a testimony, it's really a statement. As Pastor said, last time we did this program, we had Audra Barra here, and we had some other folks just talking about financial planning. I met Audra through a friend of mine who had actually used her to do her estate planning. And that friend had actually asked me to be a witness. And at the time, I witnessed her very detailed way of doing things and the questions that she asked. And I said to my friend, so what was the cost? She says, oh, quite a bit. I said, oh, okay. So even after that time, I proceeded to find somebody else to do my estate planning. Somebody recommended somebody else to me, and let me be very open, and there were probably, I think, about $200 or $300 less. And I said, okay, I'm going with this person. Could not be that difficult to do. So at the time when Ms. Barrow was actually here doing the presentation, I had retained somebody, and I had retained somebody probably a month ago. I hadn't received anything back, and I kept on calling, and I kept on calling, and I kept on saying, where is my trust? And they said, you know, the person who was doing it is out sick, you'll get it. And as I sat here and I listened to her, and she was saying all these things that your estate planner should ask, let me tell you, I was feeling, wait a minute, I'm giving people this information. This person has never asked me any of those questions. So I'm sitting here saying, I'm presenting things to these people, and I can't attest to the fact that I know anything. So I sat there and said, oh my goodness, this person has never asked me any of those questions. So I went back to them and I said, where is my estate? Where is my trust? Within a day, they sent me the trust. And I looked at it, and because of what I'd heard from her, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this is a boilerplate, there's nothing in this. And I had given this person, I'm telling you my business, $2,500 as a down payment. It was $5,000. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wait a minute, all the things that Ms. Barra said, there's nothing in here that pertains to me. I'm like, how do I get back my money and retain her? So I called him and I said, listen, this thing has nothing that pertains to me. It has nothing that pertains to my children. It has nothing, you have never asked me a question. And I started asking him some of the questions that I heard her say. And he recognized that I knew what I was saying. So he said to me, obviously, I'm not going to be able to please you. I will send you back your $2,500, which he did. So when I told her, and this is why I so trust her, she said, I do these presentations, not because, obviously she's an attorney, and she lives by her clients. She says, I do these presentations not because I'm looking for somebody to utilize me, but I want to make sure and obviously if you utilize her, she wants you to come, but I'm doing it because I want you to be educated. She said, you don't have to use me, to be educated, so if you do go into this particular planning, you are aware of the questions that you should ask and the questions that the person you retain should simultaneously ask of you. So I just wanted to give that testimony. I also had a conversation. I actually met Mr. Kirk today because he has been instrumental in helping, do you mind me saying, Margaret and her family really plan for the future. So now what I wanted to also know is that our young people, I want them here also, because part of planning is to start early. So part of what he's going to go through is how do you get to a point where you can accumulate, and then Audrey will go through and take it from that perspective. So they are two people, and they've said to me when we had our conversation, I just want our community to understand what is out there, what is possible, and what you're entitled to, because others are getting it and our community are not familiar with the information. So they are reputable, so I'm just, imploring you to listen, be intentional, and they're here to answer your questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Paulette, who will introduce Mr. Welcome, and then Elder Parkinson will introduce Audrey Barrow, and then they'll get started.
Good evening, everyone. I will be reading this bio in the first person, so I'll be Kirk G. Welcome for now. With over 2 decades in practice, my focus is on investment planning and insurance protection for higher net worth families and small business owners. My mission is to provide every client with targeted, comprehensive financial advice with the highest level of personal service and professional integrity. My team and I look at short and long-term objectives, including potential blind spots, such as living too long, dying too soon, or getting sick or ill for an extended period. As an equitable advisor, I can provide access to our advanced planning team, world-class investment and wealth strategies, trust and insurance plans with all the knowledge and experience to manage our clients through challenging times across generations. Prior to Equitable, I spent over 11 years at JP Morgan and Wells Fargo Advisors, managing investment assets for high net worth individuals and their families. Away from the office, I am passionate about fitness, 90s R&B and reggae music, we have something in common, vintage movies, and a love of travel. Born in British Guyana, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I've been active in the New York Blood Center drive since 9/11. I work closely with the Prison to College program, launched by one of my closest friends since 2010. I work closely with spending time with my 3 nephews, fiancé, and her daughter, along with my 92-year-old mom, also provides me tremendous joy. I hereby welcome, Kirk, welcome to our congregation.
Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to not really introduce, this is her 3rd time here, so that makes her family, attorney Audrey Barrow, who is a visionary at the boutique firm Barrow Law Group. The firm focuses solely on estate planning, asset protection, estate and trust administration, Medicare planning, and elder law. The firm is located in Brooklyn, New York, and services all of New York State. Ms. Barrow has practiced as an attorney for over 28 years. Before becoming an attorney, she worked in a nursing home for years, where she held held positions in several departments. Her unique perspective on asset protection and issues facing people in need of care on a daily basis was influenced by her work at the nursing home. There, she had firsthand exposure to the complex issues and the challenges families encounter when there is no estate planning or effective estate plan, or ineffective estate planning. Ms. Barrow established the firm over 26 years ago to act as a change agent and inform individuals, families, organizations, and business owners on the importance of estate planning. For over a decade, she has offered workshops to inform on estate planning and to illustrate the differences between estate planning and asset protection. Audra has a great ability to simplify complex estate planning, asset protection, and elder law concepts. As a result, she is often a sought-after speaker to present on the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and Medicaid planning. She graduated from New York Law School in 1996, and currently she teaches real estate law at NYU School of Professional Studies. She's authored an estate planning article published in the R Times Press, and she's a member of the New York State Bar Association and National Academy of Elder Attorneys, a charter member of Gotham Parliamentarians, a unit of the National Association of Parliamentarians, and she is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Audra has one son, and they reside together in Brooklyn, New York. So it's my pleasure and honor to welcome, once again, our newest family member, Audra Barrow.
Okay. Good evening. Is it evening? Okay. I need to update my bio first of all. My mom is now 94 in November. And yes, and I am married now, the fiance. It's okay, just so we have that on record. Okay, when Myron first brought this idea to me, I was very excited. I felt honored, I really was. Because I heard about last year's successful part one, and I wasn't invited. So I said, she owes me. But before I get started, I want to first thank Carol and the LInden Golden Art Agers Committee for inviting me to this very important presentation. I also like to thank Audra for being here as well. And my able assistant, Gabriella, Gabs, she's got several names, Reyes. Gabby's also my colleague, who I rely on tremendously for the work that we do. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity. So before I get started, let me just talk about, there's 5 stages that we came up with that relates to planning. Now, this is not etched in stone, so if you don't mind putting up the 5 stages, please. Yes, thank you. You'll hear different stages based on people's ages and where they are in life. But planning can never start soon enough. From my 24 years of experience, I found that those who get ahead are not necessarily making more money. They typically have done more planning. And the sooner the better. So you'll see on the screen, if we can get it up and running, that there is not, okay, that's fine. I talk about the beginning, which for the younger folks in here, and we do have a few, it shouldn't start until you're out of school, actually. Planning starts before that. I had on my screen, it was 5 years old, but typically you're talking about from 18 to 22, college years. Most people come out of school with knowledge, but not a lot of experience when it comes to this stuff that we do. So in those beginning stages, it's a good time to be educated because you're still relying on your parents. So the beginning from 18 to 22 is learning, being educated, knowing about savings, knowing about investing, knowing some of the basics, because when you get out of school, then the phase 2 becomes 23 to about 30, 32. And again, those ages are when you start to work, start looking at a family, building a family, right? And for most people that I sit down at that age, real estate and investing becomes paramount. Then you look at the ages of 32 plus to about 45. And typically that's the accumulation phase in life. That's when you're really psyched about putting money to work. You got your first job, you buy your first home, and maybe there's a family as well. So things of that nature becomes paramount to you at that stage. But also, that's the stage when you are, for most of us, start accumulating the most of your wealth. Because if you're working for a company, that's when you're working 10, 15 plus years. If you started a business, that business is up and running. So traditionally, a person between 32 to 45 or so are at their beginning peak earning stages in life. We start introducing estate planning conversations at that stage, but for the most part, that comes at the next stage, which is 45 to about 55 plus. That's where I belong. And in that phase, people traditionally start looking into estate planning, asset allocation, making sure that you have the right investment mix, that you're not taking on too much risk, but you're also preserving assets. And estate planning becomes a big conversation at that stage. Most of my clients start with me around that mid-40s to 55 years, and then we pivot over to age 55 to 65. And that's the focus becomes on income and preservation and estate planning. More and more estate planning. Because, let's face it, you're starting to see, wait a minute, the runway that I was on before, most of my life is behind. And now I'm looking at the possible end. And that's when you start to think about things in the nature of not only preserving what I have, generating some income, but what is going to happen when I stop receiving that check? How is that going to impact the next generation? And so generational planning, long-term care protection, those conversations become paramount. And for some reason, we become really reluctant to pull the trigger when it comes to estate planning. And unfortunately, when you meet with an estate attorney or someone in that field, and they ask if you have a will or trust and done any planning in the past, if you have a long-term care policy in place, then they'll come back to us as a planner saying, well, what can we do at this stage? How can we shift assets out of our name and put it into the next generation? What can we do? And that's why it's critical to start these conversations. It's never too late, but the sooner, the better. Because if there's someone or something that you care deeply about, financial planning is paramount. Before I switch over to the next phase, is there any questions about what I just discussed? I really wish I had my presentation. Sorry. Yes?
Did you say a certain age it would be too late, or you said it's never too late?
It's never too late. It can become complicated. It can be a little more difficult. But sitting down with a professional is never too late. Like it's never too late to go to a doctor, I guess. Okay, so what happened? It's here, but it's not there. Oh, what are we looking at? Okay, I was looking up here. All right, so the retirement planning process is really simple. You guys can read it. It starts with sitting down with a professional, my team and I. I didn't formally introduce Gabby like I should. Gabby has been probably the most important asset that I have in my practice. This 24 years when I left Equitable, worked in the banks, you heard my bio, I worked there for 11 years. When I came back 2.5 years ago, I said, I want to work with someone that I know has the morals, that has the hard work ethic, and also is a team player. And one name came up, and that was Gabrielle Reyes. That's why she's here with me. She's my right hand. She's the person who came to this country, by the way, about 6 years ago, no family, no friends, just by herself. Learned the language, worked hard, and 2 years ago came in top 10 in the country in her category. This young lady is, and single too, by the way. So if you guys, oh, she gets mad at me, yes. Marriage eligible fellas, if you do, are available. Okay. All right, so the planning process starts with conversations, sitting down, going through what you've done in place, what you put in place, and what your goals and objectives are. So we do believe in having conversations. We don't believe in starting with products because there's several products out there that can be very confusing. So that's the process, to sit down and then plan and then strategize based on where you are, what your goals are, what you're looking to accomplish. And then last but not least, we implement it. We believe strongly in doing holistic planning because what does that mean? It means looking from everything from 35,000 feet down and looking at your overall financial picture. Now, Myra, thank you so much, by the way, for giving me, like I said before, because Myra is someone that I've known for 30 plus years, 36 years, I don't know. Yes, I don't know, she's there. You know, quick, yeah. She's been lying and saying she's 35, isn't she? Well, we met as babies. But she's a special person in my life too, just so you know, guys, because when I started 24 years ago, I worked in the World Trade Center, 89th floor North Tower. Yes, and I left in June of '01. And I'll never forget when this went down, the first call I made, because she worked down there as well. I called like 100 times, no answers, you all remember. And then when I finally got through, she said, I'm okay. I just went to pick up Andrew, who's now 24 years old, 23 years old. So yeah, I'll never forget that. So we go way back. So that's why she has been with me throughout this whole process. She's been supportive. She's been one of my best. And sometimes, I see a head bobbing. No, but absolutely one of the best people I know, one of my best friends in the world. So I just want to share that piece as well. So thank you, Myron. All right, next slide, please. Okay, all right. When I sit down and talk about these difficult topics, you'll see up there long-term care. It's important to know the stats when it comes to this piece. 70% of Americans will need long-term care. 7 out of 10. And the average length is 3.2 years. The average cost, I'm sure Audra and I know this deeply, can run in the hundreds of thousands. So I believe I heard one time that statistically, most Americans will spend most of their assets in the final 2 years of their lives. And it's usually based on not having one of these and the right plans in place. Next. Next. Okay. We skipped something. Anyways. When it comes to long-term care and these plannings, I like to talk about it in terms of the 3 blind spots, right? Living too long, dying too soon, getting sick or hurt. These are blind spots we face, plus not having a right estate plan in place. Sorry, my bad. Okay. So another stat that's important as it relates to disability. If disability was defined as a minority group in our country, it would be the largest minority group that exists. Over 42 million Americans are disabled. And the myth, again, is usually by accident or trip or fall, but it's not. It can come from cognitive dissonance. It can come from diabetes. It can come from all these illnesses. After 9/11, people were disabled because they couldn't get into buildings anymore because of this mental stress. So that's a disability as well. So there's a reason why when we sit down and plan, it's not just about investing and making money. It's about also looking into these things that can potentially happen, getting sick or hurt for an extended period of time. So those are the 3 blind spots that we talk about when we sit down and do planning. So when I wrap up, I want to make sure you guys are aware that we'll have a sign-in sheet. We'd like to schedule time for a consultation. This is it's not scary if you do the right plans, because like I said, if you put things in place, you heard from Carol as well, doing the right plans can circumvent a lot of these issues that we face. So, how am I doing on time? I just want to make sure that 2 minutes? Okay. Is there any questions in general that anyone may have? You look like you have a question, man. Yes, not yet? Okay. All right, sure. You want to use this mic?
No, I'm okay.
No, so they can hear you.
Okay, I love to plan So what I'm thinking is that you're saying we can plan too soon, but the best time to plan is from 18 to 22. 22 years. 18 to 22 years.
Okay.
Did I hear right?
All right. So the question is the best time to start planning from 18 to 22? You heard part of it, and that's true. I'd say in those years, usually we ignore that group because we're thinking they're going to be in school, and when they come out, they get a job, and then they should plan. But that period is the period of education. That's the period, because most people at that age do not have money, right? Okay.
So is it that the parents can plan for the children at that age until they reach 18 to an extent?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that point. It's a great point you made. I was more focused on the kids because a lot of times, yes, the parents can plan and they do. My good friend, dear friend, did planning for both her kids. And that involved college savings, which is a major expense, as you can imagine. So we put plans in place for those kids to make sure that they can at least afford college, most of it. So yes, it happens. But my focus was about taking it a step further, and that's educating teenagers, young people, young adults about these concepts so that it's not foreign to them when they do start to make money and looking to buy a place, and avoid some of the mistakes that we all made when we first at that age started making, our first job, our first full-time gig, and things of that nature. So it's both. Does that answer your question? It's about educating the kids at that age. It's very important, but also doing plans in place for those kids when they get older, that they don't have to start over, because as a generation, we tend to start over a lot. Okay? I hope I answered your question. Sure. Okay. Any others? I see a hand up.
I did have a question, but I was waiting a little bit to see if it was going to be answered in the presentation. But So I'm at a stage in life where I'm already an empty nester, so college and all that is out for me.
You're already an empty nester?
I'm an empty nester.
Okay.
Yeah. When you mention long-term care, I've heard some information or misinformation, I don't know what it is, that when a person has long-term care insurance, it can decrease if you live a little longer than expected. I'm not sure what the real...
If the amounts you receive can decrease the longer you live?
Yeah, like for example, say I have coverage, I'm just going to throw some numbers out.
That's fine.
Say I have coverage for, say, $100,000 for the year, but I am now 80. That coverage reduces to 50,000. Is that true? I don't know if what I heard was true or false.
That should not happen. I'll tell you what decreases, though.
Yeah.
The value of that 100,000 decreases as you get older. That's what goes down. 100,000 paid a lot 20, 30 years ago. Today, it'll probably be worth, you need 200,000 just to cover the same cost. So the value of that cost may go down, but not the cost. The coverage itself should not. Yes. Yes.
Just to help out here with your question, Maureen, I have long-term care since I was like about 30 years old.
Okay.
At that time, it was $20.
Yes.
And because of inflation, and to keep up with the amount of money that I would like to have, I'm now paying $95.
Right.
A month.
And that's normal.
Right. So it doesn't decrease, but you have to keep up because the value of the insurance goes down. And if you want to maintain, say, $100,000 in insurance, but that's nothing. You have to keep up with the rates. And they would they would ask you if you want to do that, or you can, you know.
And most insurance will go up, even if you lock in a rate. It's part of the provisions.
Definitely, yes.
It can increase. That's why it's important to have a review of your policies.
Yes.
And see where you are. Yes. But that's a great point as well. Thank you. I see another question. How are we doing, Carol? No? I can ask more. Okay. I see. All right. I'll remember those two hands. One more question? Okay. Sure. Okay. All right. Who had hands up first? You did? Okay. So.
For a young person, who is in the age bracket of about 25 to 30 years old, when you speak to them about investment, what would you suggest that they would be the best plan for them? Would it be a life insurance or investment? What would you suggest?
Okay.
To start them off?
Okay. I'll push back a little bit on the or and go, why not both? Different vehicles for different solutions. Most people that I do planning with ultimately will end up with between 3 or 4 strategies. That includes insurance, investments, disability if they don't have it through work, and if they have some kind of 1099 or income outside, we'll set up some type of SEP or profit share or retirement plan as well. From the earlier the better, because you don't need as much when you're younger. That's why it's so critical to plan when you're younger. This allows you to accumulate wealth a lot faster over time versus waiting until it's a little later in life. So yes, but the answer is why not both? Thank you. Listen, thank you guys very, very much. I see the interest. Again, this has been a pleasure of mine and an honor, and we have a sign-in sheet. Gabby will be there taking names as well, and it's a complimentary consultation. This is not something that we believe in charging people for. So, with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Audra Barra. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to start by thanking the pastoral team here with a special thanks to the senior pastor, Pastor Albury, as well as to the LInden Golden Youth Committee, with a special thanks to Carol Bennett for recognizing the importance of bringing this conversation to the congregation today, and even for streaming it. I wish this was a packed house with standing room only, because the information that you're hearing this evening is so very important to our communities. So, Mr. Welcome just spoke to you a little bit about wealth, and I still speak about wealth. I'm an estate planner, an elder law attorney, and what so many of us don't realize in our communities, or are uninformed about or under-informed of, is the importance to preserve wealth. So you can amass as much wealth as you want. What happens if one incident robs you of that wealth? It could be deed theft. It could be one of the broader systemic issues that we face in our communities. But what happens if we're robbed of that wealth? What are we going to do as individuals, as families and communities of people of color to protect our wealth? What have you put in place? I want to ask each one of you, because today I'm only speaking about a health crisis, but each one of you, I'm asking you to stop for a moment and think to yourselves, if you had a health crisis, or maybe the breadwinner had a health crisis, or the matriarch or patriarch of your family had a health crisis, how are you going to pay for it? Do you know the cost of care? Let me share a statistic with you that I read the other day. I read the other day that older Americans hold nearly 2/3 of the country's wealth. So not only should older members of this congregation be here, but the younger members should definitely be here as well. Because if we lose our wealth, if the older members of the congregation lose their wealth, they cannot pass it on to the younger members. So we can't wait until we're older to determine how to preserve our wealth. And that is why the firm Barrow Law Group created this workshop entitled Crisis or Prevention. So today I'm going to speak to you a little bit about crisis, or did you do some pre-planning to prevent the crisis? Before I get started, I want to tell you the agenda for the workshop today is review the handouts. So, and to show you the difference, as I just said, between pre-planning and crisis. I don't know if my evaluation is going to work. It's a QR code on my PowerPoint presentation, so I don't know whether or not you'll be able to access it. And then we will have a question and answer session. I will stop in between the workshop to ask you if you have any questions, probably once. The handouts that you were given today were a note page, so hopefully you've taken notes during Mr. Welcome's presentation as well as mine. The other handouts is a QR code, and this QR code should give you access to my bio, as well as to the 2024 Medicaid guide created by Barrow Law Group. The reason why that guide is important is because those are the new numbers. We're in April, they just were published in January of 2024, and every year that information changes, so that's the updated guide for you. Also, it's a small card. It's not really a business card, it's a small card, something like a palm card. And this palm card gives you access to Barrow Law Group's website. So it's our contact information and access to our website. In the event you want to take one of our workshops or hear this workshop again, we offer workshops at no cost and no obligation. They've already told you what my practice specializes in, but for those of you who walked in afterwards, the practice's focus is estate planning, Medicaid planning, estate and trust administration, and elder law. That's our only 4 areas that we practice in, and we only practice in 4 areas because we want to stay abreast of what we do, and we want to give our clients an excellent service. So this QR code will take you to also a scheduling link, and as I said earlier, you have the Medicaid guide. So my slide reads, in one day, your entire life can change. Just in one day. Let me tell you the story about Clarence. Clarence is a man that family came to my office. And when I asked the family what happened to Clarence, I was told that Clarence was getting ready for work, and he kissed his wife goodbye, was walking out the door. So from the fact that I'm telling you that he kissed his wife goodbye, you might realize that he was the breadwinner. He walked out the door, he began to ascend the steps, and he missed a step. When he missed a step, they took Clarence to the hospital. When Clarence was taken to the hospital, he was declared a paraplegic. So he had his mental capacity, but he was unable to walk, unable to go to the bathroom, now unable to dress himself, unable to transfer. His entire life changed in one day. Do you think Clarence had to be elderly for that to happen to him? Don't we all slip sometimes or have an accident? I'm so accident prone, every week I have a black and blue mark on my body. I might bump into something. But in essence, what I'm trying to say to you is the unexpected can happen any day. Are you prepared? So let me tell you a little bit about crisis. Crisis is when you need help, you need assistance in order to perform the normal activities of daily living. And you need that assistance now, or in 6 months, or within the next year. And the best crisis planner is an elder law attorney, not the nursing home, not the rehab facility, not the company that says they can do this for less. It's the elder law attorney. And let me tell you why. Because it's the elder law attorney that knows strategies that's going to preserve your assets. I'm not telling you that the nursing home or rehab facility can't apply and get you qualified for Medicaid. But did you know that there's Medicaid recovery? Maybe Medicaid is going to come back after your assets and they wouldn't pass on anyway to who you'd want them to pass on to. So that's crisis. Pre-planning is what you can do now. It's that vertical planning, that upright planning, when you're not down, when you have presence of mind, when you don't have some situation that you're dealing with that you weren't dealing with before in terms of a health crisis. So that's what pre-planning is. Pre-planning requires you to do it or to have a plan in place a minimum of 3 years before a possible crisis. And again, I just want to stress to you, we're only speaking about a crisis today, but there are other reasons to plan. But today we're only speaking about a health crisis. Now, when you're in crisis, like Clarence's family was, the question is, how do you pay for the cost of care? And how costly is it going to be to your family? Covering the cost of your care and losing you as a family member, how costly will that be to your family? I don't mean losing your presence because you're alive, but losing your assets because you haven't put anything in place to pay for the cost of care. So the cost of care ranges from $10,000 to $15,000. You see, I put that in red per month. So that is $120,000 per year, up to $175,000 per year. How will you pay for that cost? Well, if you're independently wealthy and you have, you earn over maybe $20,000 per month, then you probably can pay for the cost of care on your own and wouldn't need to qualify or look into any other avenue to pay for the cost of care. And so if you're earning that type of income, whether it be retirement income or otherwise, I'm not speaking to you about crisis today, most likely. But if you're not independently wealthy, then we look to the next method of paying for the cost of care. And that next method is long-term care insurance. So long-term care insurance is insurance that Mr. Welcome spoke to you about a little bit earlier. And it is insurance that you purchase just in the event you become unable to manage your own activities of daily living. And the insurance is a pool. So someone asks, does the pool reduce? No, the pool does not reduce. It is a pool of money. And the average person who has long-term care, and I say this from my own personal knowledge because people come into my office all the time, and that's one of the questions that I ask. And the average person who has long-term care does not know what their daily limit is or what the pool amount is. You have to know both, And the older you get and the longer it takes you to acquire this type of insurance, the more costly it does become. So a younger person acquiring this insurance is able to pay less money for it than an older person. It will cost more, and some people will not qualify. But the importance of long-term care is that long-term care is a stopgap. So if it was Clarence, and Clarence walked into my office, and his family or he had long-term care in place, then the question would only be, at that time, the questions would be, what's the pool amount? And how much is the daily amount? And why that is important is because I said to you that $10,000 is for community Medicaid. That's care in the home. And up to $15,000 is the cost for care in a skilled nursing care facility. So let's say that the average cost of care is $469 per day. And your long-term care insurance says it covers you for $269 a day, then you have a $200 per day shortfall. You have to pay that. That $200 a day shortfall works out to be $6,000 a month. And it's only for a period of time. But what the long-term care insurance does is it enables you, if you haven't created a plan, to create a plan to try to preserve your assets. And it allows the money that you might have been bringing to the home to continue to come into the home while you use the long-term care. So the other way of paying for care is the government pays. And I know when I'm saying to you the government pays, you're probably thinking to yourself, I'll never qualify. And today, I'm going to show you how you can qualify for Medicaid and still have assets. And I've just got to go on a tangent for one moment in terms of assets. So often I speak to people and I use the word assets, and all of a sudden someone thinks that I'm not speaking to them, that you don't have assets, that assets are something that only the wealthy have. Assets are anything of value. You might have a home, but you don't have to have a home for you to have assets. A home is assets. A bank account is assets. Brokerage account, your retirement, those are all examples of assets. Your cash whole life insurance policy, because it has a cash value. Anything of value is an asset. So we all in this room most likely have assets. I want, as a people, for us to stop thinking we don't have anything to protect. We have something to protect. And if we haven't used it in our lifetime, I hope we feel the obligation to make certain the next generation gets it. So Medicaid will pay for the cost of care. And Medicaid is the best payer for custodial or long-term care. Very often, there is a misconception that you have medical insurance or you have Medicare, so you don't need to qualify for Medicaid. So I want to dispel that misconception because it's incorrect. So let's start with health insurance. Health insurance pays for medical services. A doctor's visit, surgery, a stay in the hospital, hospitalization, sometimes also prescription coverage, That's what your medical covers. We're speaking about someone who needs care or help with their activities of daily living on a daily basis. So I'm not speaking about going to visit the doctor, going to the hospital necessarily. That's not what we're talking about. We're speaking about the need for care every day, because Clarence is a quadriplegic. He can't prepare his food, most likely. I don't think he's getting to a stove. He's not washing his clothes. He's not disrobing himself. He's not dressing himself. I'm speaking about a person needing care every day. In terms of Medicare, Medicare does pay for long-term care for up to 100 days per incident. And when I say up to 100 days, so at 101 days, Medicare no longer pays for that care. If you qualify, Medicare will pay for 100% of that care for the first 20 days. 100% of your custodial care for the first 20 days. And from day 21 to day 100, there is a $204 deductible. We're back to that over $6,000 amount per month. So from day 21 to 100, there's a $204 deductible, which will be borne by you. I want to share with you a story about a client before I go to this next slide, who came to me maybe about 6 years ago. The client came to me about 6 years ago and sat down with me. She was about to go into a procedure, to have a procedure done, and she wanted a power of attorney. She said once she got out of the procedure, she and her husband would come visit me and they would put planning in place. And so she was able to get the power of attorney that year. She had the procedure done. She never came back. And I shouldn't say never. She didn't come back that year. About 2 or 3 years later, she came back. In the midst of the pandemic, she came back to me with her husband. We did the planning. They put a plan in place. And the other day, their child calls me, an adult woman, and she says to me, "My father needs care." At the time that she called late in the evening, and I wasn't in the office, so I couldn't look at her file. So I said to her, "Okay, how long ago did your parents plan?" Because I couldn't recall. Well, it was maybe about 2.5 years or somewhere around there. And her father needs care at this time. Very often we think we have time. We'll wait. See my crystal ball? I love props. This is to tell you that you don't know the future. We don't know what the future holds. We can't look into this crystal ball. We're not clairvoyant. We don't know. I'm in a house of worship. I know we pray, but we do not know. So the idea that you have time, I have to offer to you, is not a good idea. Because right now, she is scrambling. They planned, but they didn't plan in time. So in order to qualify for Medicaid, it's a 3-prong test. Medicaid looks to see, 1, if you're able to participate in those activities of daily living. So they look at you medically to see what help you need, what assistance you need, and they come in and they assess you. So that's the first prong of the test. That prong I can't help you with. The second prong of the test is to qualify as to income. And I want everyone to realize today that that is not an issue or something you even begin to think about if you don't need care. You continue to earn your income, spend your income, build your wealth, and don't think about income. The year, God forbid, something happens to you or a family member, that's when we look at income. I gave you the Medicaid guide, and we'll be going over some of the numbers today. That's based on today's force numbers. What estate planners do is we protect assets. So pre-planning is a way to protect assets so that if you ever are in crisis, perhaps you have pre-planned in time and your assets can be protected. So the three-prong test is for Medicaid to look at you medically. They're going to look at your income, and they're going to look at your assets. In terms of income, the reason why I'm telling you not to be concerned with that is because there's no way for us to protect your income. It's reoccurring. You have income coming in the future. I can't protect what's coming in the future. I can protect it once it's earned and it's an asset. But I can't protect what's coming in the future. But if you're ever over the Medicaid limit and you are in need of Medicaid, then a pooled income trust can be established. And on that pooled income trust, the amount of money that you're over the Medicaid limit by is deposited into that pooled income trust, and you can draw on it. So I deal with a pooled income trust company that gives my clients like a credit card. So if they have mental capacity, they can do their own shopping. But if they don't, then their family can do shopping for them. Or their family can ask the pooled income trust company to pay some of their monthly bills. So you still have access to that income to spend on yourself or the family member who needs the care, so long as it's not for drugs, alcohol, I believe cigarettes. All right. So these are the activities of daily living. Personal hygiene is one. So if a person is able to maintain their own personal hygiene, meaning bathe themselves, take care of themselves so they are able to maintain their own personal hygiene. Dressing. Are you able to dress yourself? And do you have the mental capacity to dress yourself appropriately for where you're going and the weather? You know, sometimes you'll see someone outside and it's a hot summer day and they have on a coat. Or sometimes you'll see someone outside and it's cold and they're in shorts and maybe bareback. And obviously that person is not dressing properly. Eating, whether or not you can feed yourself. Some people are even unable to chew. Toileting, whether or not you can take yourself to the bathroom and whether or not you have the urge, you feel the urge of when you need to relieve yourself. Transferring is getting out of the bed, maybe to stand up or to sit down. And then, of course, walking. If you're able to walk with a walker or you're able to walk with a cane, that's sufficient, but are you able to walk? So those are the 6 activities of daily living that you have to basically be able to do on your own, but if you need help with 2 or more of them, or you have diminished capacity, you will probably be able to qualify for Medicaid. Now, this first slide here is about community Medicaid. So if you can recall, I spoke about community Medicaid, and community Medicaid is Medicaid in the home. It keeps you in your home. So you're able to receive services in the comforts of your home and stay in the community. That is not a determination made by an attorney either. That is a determination made by Medicaid. But if you are able to stay in the home, then your income for a single person must be below $1,732. And again, the overage can go in the pooled income trust and you can draw on it. And when I say draw on it, if you're renting and you're getting assistance in your apartment, then that means that if your rent was $2,000 and your income is $4,000 and the overage went into the pooled income trust, you could give them your $2,000 rent to pay. They can pay it out of the pooled income trust. Your total assets or resources that you have cannot exceed $31,175. And I'm not speaking about your home, I'm speaking about everything other than your home cannot exceed $31,175. And if there is a couple that's living together, husband and wife, domestic partners living together, this information applies as well for the person who needs the care, and the non-applicant spouse or partner can have assets up to $154,140. So it's supposed to be implemented in 2025. There's supposed to be a look-back period to qualify for community Medicaid. So everyone else that you know right now that has care in the home or has an aide in the home, they didn't have a look-back period. They could hire an elder attorney and elder law attorney and create a plan and then apply for Medicaid. As of January 2025, there is going to be a 2.5-year look back. So it's really important that we begin to plan now so that we have our assets in a plan before the look back is implemented. For married couples.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Sorry. Was it 5 years or is it changed from 5 years to 2.5 years look back?
No.
No?
So this is for community Medicaid.
Oh, it's a different, oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay.
All right.
So married couples. Married couples, if both spouses are applying, the income must be below $2,351. The overage would be deposited in the pooled income trust. And asset resources, the assets or resource level is $42,312. So Mr. Welcome just asked me a question because he's familiar with the 5-year look back. And most of you may be familiar with the 5-year look back. The 5-year look back does not apply to community Medicaid. So people who are receiving care at home right now have no look back. You can be ill and receive care at home if you qualify without a look back. So in other words, a plan can be created by an elder law attorney that can preserve your assets or protect them, and you can qualify for Medicaid. Now the look back, the 5-year look back applies to nursing home or institutionalized care. If you're going into a rehab center or nursing home, then there is a 5-year look back. And pooled income trust does not come into play with institutionalized care. With institutionalized care, Medicaid says, listen, we're paying for room and board. You have to give up all your money. You can protect your assets, but all of your money you have to give up. You can keep $50 of a personal needs allowance on a monthly basis for your personal needs. You want to get your hair done, haircut, nails done, anything like that, $50.
$50.
Again, the total assets here are below $31,175 for a single person. If there's a married couple and one spouse is in a institution, that spouse's income is $3,853.50. I know that I hear all of you gasping, but I just want to say this to you. The other day I gave this workshop, I think it was last week, and when I give it in a smaller crowd, I actually hand out a piece of paper asking everyone to write down how they'll pay for the cost of care. One woman decided to volunteer. Her answer, I don't ask anybody to read it or tell me, but I asked, would anyone like to share how they would pay for the cost of care? And you know what the woman said to me? She said, well, I would liquidate my bank accounts. I would liquidate my brokerage accounts. Do you see where this is going? So while I'm talking about your income, unfortunately, we can't protect your income, but we can protect your assets.